Hey sweeties, and Happy New Year! This is the January 2020 class of Sweet Sentiment, and I am so excited to bring this to you guys. We have an amazing new class that we're doing this month and an amazing new add-on. We now have a cool subscription called the CAT, which means Color All the Things. And if you sign up for the CAT subscription, you can get the background class as well. You can buy the background classes separately. So if you are a normal subscriber or you are just buying this class on its own, know that there is a background class that goes along with it. So let's get started. First of all, we have this awesome new stamp set from Sweet Sentiment Stamps, and I am all about making these stamps super versatile. So even though this is our New Year's stamp set, it says Happy New Year's. I hope it doesn't suck as bad as last year. This is kind of a versatile set in that you can use it sort of for anything. She has all kinds of attitude and it's so much fun. This says, sometimes I have to tell myself it just is not worth the jail time. And if the world would be a nicer place if everyone just took a chill pill. It would be even better if some of them choked on it. These are meant to be silly, these are meant to be funny, and they're kind of meant to be snarky. I don't know about you guys, but everybody does the whole New Year's resolution thing, and I am just fine with my snarky self, so I'm not a resolution kind of person. So this stamp set kind of embodies that for me. So we're going to color up this girl right now. Also in your kit, you will get this amazing Sweet Sentiment stencil. This is a really cool background stencil that you can use for pretty much any occasion, and it's just super, super fun. So I wanted to bring you guys something new and fun and exciting. So this is also in your kit along with the stamp set. So let's get started. So first of all, I've stamped her out on Sweet Sentiment coloring paper, and I've stamped her out using Memento London Fog. I like to use not a vibrant black to stamp these out, especially when I'm doing backgrounds, because that helps to kind of make the lines from this image sort of fade into the background. So Memento London Fog is what I used. So now let's get cracking on coloring this, shall we? We have not done in our classes a darker skin tone before, so I wanted to make this nice, rich, dark skin tone. It's actually kind of a mid-tone because I think it's just such a beautiful color. So I'm going to show you the markers I used for that. First of all, I have E18 as my shadow marker. I have E15 as a secondary shadow marker. I have E13 as my true color. I have E11 as my highlight, and I have E21 as the extreme highlight. Okay, so these are the Copic markers that we are using for this skin tone. You're gonna have so much fun with this. It is awesome. So the thing you need to know about skin tones is it is a method. We have learned to color a method throughout the whole last year of Sweet Sentiment classes, and we're going to continue coloring with that method. I know when we start going into the darker colors, a lot of people get really scared and nervous of it. I want to show you it's the exact same thing that we've been doing all along. So we're going to start with E21. Now, usually in my skin tone, what I do is I start by laying down a base coat. Sorry, I totally forgot all my words and how to talk. So I know this is gonna look weird because this is a much darker base coat than we're used to coloring, but I'm gonna go ahead and color right over the top of that gray line. I usually start by coloring something to warm myself up. So, you know, in sports, you warm up prior to going out and playing. So we're going to do the same thing with coloring. So her legs are going to be easier to color than her face because they're a lot less detailed, obviously. So we're going to start by coloring her legs. So I've just taken that E21 and I've put a nice even coat all the way through. Now I'm gonna go to my E18. With E18, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and lay the shadows in where I think they would be. So I'm gonna assume that the sun is kind of right here in front of her, that she's sort of looking towards the sun. So I'm gonna use that as a guide to decide where all of my shadows are gonna go. This leg is very obviously in front of this leg. So anything on this leg is going to be shadowed. So I'm gonna drop a shadow, nice, even, soft shadow, and then I'm gonna kind of feather it out just a little bit so it's easier to blend on the back of that leg. Well, on the front of that leg. And I'm gonna take a second just to make sure that that gray line is covered up. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. It doesn't matter so much if the gray line is covered up here because we also have her yoga pants that we're going to use to cover up that gray line. Then I'm gonna do the same thing here, is where this front leg is in front of this back leg. I'm gonna go ahead and drop another shadow. And then I'm gonna shadow kind of around her toes. Not all the way because we're not outlining this per se. We still wanna kind of give it that no lines look about it. So just kind of where her toes overlap, and then where this one's sort of here on the floor. And I know that this would all sort of be in shadow here. Don't be afraid to elongate these shadows. It'll give it more dimension and make it really look purposeful that that's where you're putting that shadow. Okay, now we're gonna look at this front leg. And I know that where her yoga pants are, overlapping them, that's also gonna leave a shadow. I'm gonna go ahead and shadow that. I'm gonna shadow between her toes. And then again, I'm gonna shadow across the bottom here. Just kind of where her leg would be touching the floor. Okay. Now, what I'm gonna do is the same thing over here, where her yoga pants would leave a shadow on her leg. I'm gonna go ahead and shadow that. I'm gonna curve this shadow down. I'm gonna kind of fade that shadow out, just like that. All right, so now we have these shadows put down, and now we need to start to blend them out into the highlight. So I'm gonna use my secondary shadow color, that's this E15. With this E15, what I'm gonna do is I'm always gonna take these shadows and I'm gonna push them back to where the shadows belong. I'm not going to drag that shadow out into the highlight, because if I do that, then I'm gonna muddy up my highlight and I won't have those nice bright highlights. So I'm always gonna take this pen and I'm gonna push that shadow back towards itself. I'm using the alcohol in this ink to saturate the ink. Copic markers don't blend, they layer. So I can either push that ink back or I can layer on top of it, but I cannot mix the two colors. So what I'm doing here is I am putting a layer of this color on top of the darker layer, and I'm also pushing that darker layer so that's a nice, smooth, even transition. Okay. Now I'm gonna move over here and do the same thing. And you don't really have to there's no real rhyme or reason to, what part I'm choosing to color next. I'm just coloring what's handy, what's convenient, and kind of following my lines around. Okay, I'm going to continue to color down here. Around her toes. And again, notice I'm always rotating my paper. I want to make sure that my pen is in the best position. My wrist is in a nice, comfortable position so that I can blend these nice and smoothly. I'm not gonna forget this part of her foot down here. I'm always putting the paper in a position to where I can color away from myself so that I can remember that I'm trying to push this darker color into the shadow and not pull it out of the shadow. This is the exact same method, you'll notice, as we have been using with any of the lighter skin tones. You're going to use this method for pretty much every skin tone you color. And it doesn't matter if you're coloring blues, if you want to do like a, like you have a filter on and have the entire picture be all blues or purples or pinks or any color you want. It's all just a method. Now this marker, this E13 that I'm using, is the middle color in my blend. So as you could tell when I was introducing the markers, they are, or this color is my true color. This is the true color of her skin. So you'll also notice I'm being considerably more liberal with this color, meaning I'm adding a lot more of it than I did with the other colors. I want the eye to really register and recognize this color, so that's why I'm using it a lot more. Soften up any lines that I've left. Okay. E11 is my next color. Same thing, I'm going to continue to push these colors out. Now E11 has a lot of a pink undertone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go not all the way into the shadow, but definitely further back into the shadow to kind of add that pink undertone to the rest of her skin. And you can see I'm kind of using the side of the marker and not the very tip. The reason for that is I want more coverage. You can also see that the grip that I have on the marker is much further back. It's not right up near the nib. I do that because I want to be able to have nice big brush strokes using that side of the nib. And now I am back to my E21. And again, I'm going to continue to push those darker colors out of my highlight. Give her that nice, beautiful, glowing skin tone. All right, now, again, the camera will pick up the glitter in the paper, if you can see that. So just FYI, it's gonna look a little bit uneven on the camera because of the glitter in the paper, but once I hold it up, you can see. Okay, there we go. I'm also going to show you a little trick. Notice I colored outside the lines just a little bit down here. I have my colorless blender, and what I'm going to do with my colorless blender is I'm going to take that line and I'm going to push it back towards itself. I'm not going to oversaturate too much, so I'm not going to leave this marker just to sit on the paper. But I'm going to push that line back in. Just like that. Okay. Now we're going to move on. I'm going to, I'm actually going to do her face next. So we're gonna do her face and chest. Now that I've warmed up by coloring her legs. So a nice smooth even coat. When you are coloring her face, be sure not to color the white part of her eyes because it's been left open. The artist behind this stamp is Christy Dolman, and oh my goodness, you guys, I adore her artwork. The snark that she was able to capture in this girl's face, just the grumpiness of it all makes me really happy. I'm not gonna lie. Very talented artist. So thank you, Christy. All right. So that E21. Now I'm gonna move over to my E18. Now I'm going to, again, think about where the sun is at. And wherever that sun is at, that's where I'm gonna cast these shadows. So I know that her hair here is gonna leave a little bit of a shadow on her face because she has this big, wild, crazy hair. So pretty. I can't wait to color this hair, you guys. It's pretty awesome. Okay, and then I know that her hand is gonna leave a shadow on her face because it's in front of the sun. And also down here on her neck. Okay, I'm going to do the other side of her hair here. Just like that. Going to do this little line where her eyelids close. Okay, now I'm going to do around her nose. I'm kind of following the artist drawn lines, leaving a little bit of a shadow there. I'm gonna do this little line in her chin, kind of the bottom of her lip sort of thing. And then I'm gonna come around down here and bring this shadow down just a little bit. Okay. Now, I know that this is going to be in shadow, and I'm gonna bring that shadow out onto her shoulder just a little bit. Then I know that her shirt is gonna cast a little bit of a shadow on her chest. And then we're left with her chin. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a line around under her chin. And I'm gonna kind of accentuate that line just a little bit, so it really looks like her chin is casting a shadow onto her neck. Okay? I know it seems crazy because that's like a super thick line, but I promise you it will blend out. Okay, so now to E15. Again, I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I did before. I'm gonna use this marker to push that shadow into the shadow and also stain the pigment of the paper this color back towards the highlight, or out towards the highlight, so that we're working ever closer to the highlight. Since I've done and spent so much time thinking about where my shadows go, these subsequent layers don't take quite as long because I already have laid down the hard part, the foundation of the shadow. I am going to use this marker to make this shadow line here where her cheek is all squished up. And I'm going to take these eyebrow lines and kind of, eyelid lines, and kind of start to elongate them out to give her eyes definition. Okay. also going to trace this center line of her lip, where she kind of has her mouth pulled up in a pout. It's not gonna matter too much because we're gonna give her some lipstick, but we want to make sure that all of this blends the same so that she has nice even skin tone. Okay, following these lines around. And again, I'm always rotating my paper so that I'm pushing these shadow lines away from my body. Okay. Now I'm going to turn her upside down and finish these shadows that I have back here. All right. Now to our E13. And again, since I've done the hard part of laying in the shadows already, it makes this one a lot easier. Also, now we know that this is the true color of her skin, so we're going to be a lot more liberal with this color. Basically, that means that this color is not shadow and not highlight. It's the true color. So, anywhere that would be not in shadow and not in highlight, that's where we're going to put this color. I'm going to keep rotating my paper. I'm also going to outline her eyes in this color. And start to close in some of these gaps. Define her nose a little bit. There we go. Okay. I know it always looks kind of weird when you're in between. Especially when you're coloring with darker colors. When you're in between steps, it's always like, whoa, what am I doing? But I promise, just keep going. Now remember, this E11 is a little more pink, so I'm gonna go back into some of the shadow and kind of overlay this color so that that pink shows. Also, this is the beginning of our highlight colors, so make sure you're leaving room in the highlight for the next color. It's just kind of a matter of closing the gap at this point. Coloring things in step by step and closing that gap. I'm going to start to add some little shadow to her nose, to the top of her nose here, just to add some dimension, and so it doesn't all look the same value. And I'm going to color in around this, again making sure that this kind of pink hue goes into those shadow colors. I'm not going all the way to the darkest shadow, I'm just going over the E15 and 13 a little bit. Okay, now I have my E21. Again, I'm going to start in the highlight and color everything out. Making sure that I'm saturating everything so that it all blends together smoothly. Trying not to lose that attitude that she has in her face, that look in her eye. Push these shadow colors back. I'm going to come into her shoulder and kind of overlay this to make a highlight. Just like that. There we go. Now her face is colored. So let's color these two arms. And since I have the E21 in my hand, I'm just going to go ahead and color these. Just like that. I'm going to do both of them at the same time. If you are one of those people who likes to color all of the skin at the same time, you don't have to do it in stages like me. You can color it all at once. I just like to do pieces, otherwise I find that I forget things. And I don't want to forget things. All right, so E18. And again, we're going to look at where our shadows will lie. So I know this little fold at the palm of her hand, the crease, will leave a shadow. I know that this finger, her pinky finger here, is going to leave a shadow on the rest of her hand. Same with this finger, anywhere where it overlaps. Same with this finger. And then since these are on the bottom, her knuckles are on the bottom, they're going to be farthest away from the sun, so they're going to leave a shadow, or they're going to be in shadow. They're not casting a shadow on anything, but they're going to be in shadow just because they're farthest away from the sun. Then I'm going to add a little shadow down here and at the crease of her thumb. Then down where her sleeve is. Just like that. Now we're going to move over to this hand. Same thing, where her sleeve leaves a shadow on her arm. We're going to put a shadow in there. Okay. Now, this is where this is going to get a little bit tricky, because if the sun is shining directly on her face, then this part is going to be in shadow. And where her finger is here. And then I'm going to leave a little shadow, excuse me, where her knuckles come in. Like like that. I'm gonna put a little bit of a shadow under her wrist here, just for dimension. And I think I'm actually gonna do that over here as well. Just at this part of your wrist where it would be kind of darker in shadow. All right, so now my E15. And again, I'm just gonna follow these shadows around, elongating them a little bit. The reason I've left the end cap on this one is because this marker, I can tell, is getting a little bit tacky, a little bit sticky. And so I'm trying to force all of the ink from this end down into the nib. So the Copic markers are pressurized, the barrels are pressurized. And so since I know that this marker is getting empty, I'm just forcing the ink down to the bottom or into that brush nib. Usually you want to color with both caps off unless you know your marker is really dry, because that will prevent you from getting blobs of ink or your marker leaking onto your project that you're trying to color. And I'm just going around wherever I left a shadow. There we go. E13. Same thing. I'm not coloring in her fingers entirely. I'm just leaving enough where I could put a highlight in there. Okay, moving over to this side. Always pushing that shadow away from me. Sorry, going off the screen. There we go. And again, you can see the glitter through the paper, or the glitter on the paper through the light, but if I move this, then it's nice and smooth. So it's just the way the light is catching the glitter. I love the little bit of shimmer to this paper. It's so fun, and I think it adds a lot of dimension and interest to your coloring. And I love that you can see the little bit of shimmer through the Copic markers. So Sweet Sentiment paper is definitely a great coloring paper for you to use. Whether you color with Copics or Pro markers or Prismacolor pencils, or I use polychromo pencils. If you happen to be a watercolorist, it's just really fun paper to use. Okay, almost finished here. Let's grab this last marker, our E21. And again, we're going to go into that highlight and push the rest of that color out. Yay! I love this skin combination. I think it's so pretty. It's a nice soft, like tan, chocolatey color. I don't even know how to describe it, but I think it's really pretty. It's a very striking skin color, and I think that once we add this super dark brown hair to it, it just makes it pop that much more. All right, and now her skin is complete other than one little thing. I like to pull out my R20 and add a little bit of color to her cheeks. So I'm gonna take this R20 and I'm gonna add just some wispies. It's a technical term there. Just wisp some color in here to her cheeks. Kind of adds to her petulance. Then I'm gonna take this E21 again and I'm gonna kind of blend that color out. There we go. Just adds a little bit of rosiness to her cheeks and I really like it. So there's the skin tone. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this hair. Now, when you look at this hair, I know it seems a little bit crazy because there's not a lot of artist drawn lines to go with, but we're definitely gonna spend some time creating in the hair, and this will be great for you to learn how to kind of create something that's not totally there. So, my shadow color is gonna be W10. Here's my W10. The next color will be, E49. E77, E47, and E57. These colors are a little bit tonal. Yes, the W10 is very, very dark, and yes, the E57 is still kind of like a medium dark brown. So it's gonna be kind of hard for you to decipher as we go through these first 3 to 4 colors, but then once you overlay that E57 on top, the hair really comes to life and it looks amazing. So you just gotta stick with me here for a little bit. We're gonna start with our W10. Okay. So with our W10, we're gonna come in and we're gonna go ahead and look at this hair and we're gonna decide where the shadows are going to be. So first things first is I see this piece of her hair as being in front of everything else. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna kind of outline it just a little bit, just slightly. Nice little outline. So that I remember everything behind that is going to be in shadow. Okay. Then I'm going to do the same thing to this side of it. I'm not going to really outline what's on her forehead because we're going to get to that in just a second. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this part in her hair. And I know that this part in her hair, like when you part somebody's hair, it's generally darker. So I'm gonna go ahead and start leaving like these little brush strokes to make that part of her hair, okay? I know this is gonna be intimidating, but we're gonna work through it. I promise you it'll be okay. Then I'm gonna put these brush strokes back towards me because when you part somebody's hair, it goes like that. So that's exactly what I'm gonna mimic here with these brush strokes, okay? Take a deep breath, we're there. I'm gonna go ahead and, excuse me, I'm gonna make this curl come back to that part. So what I'm gonna do is leave these little brush strokes. And if you're more comfortable doing these brush strokes away from you, you can. Or if you're more comfortable doing them towards you, you can. Either way works just fine. Okay? So normally I'm telling you to follow the artist drawn lines. What I'm going to tell you with this hair is to follow the shape of her head. That's what's going to be most important. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to follow just kind of the shape of this ringlet here, how it goes around her head or around her face. And I'm going to do the same thing this way. This is going to add curl. So notice how my lines are going like in a downward motion. That's how it's gonna add curl. Okay, so now I have this cool little spiky thing on her head. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna pull this one out right here, because I feel like this one's behind everything else in the front of her hair. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna leave these little brush strokes this direction from her part. So again, they're kind of going angular. Okay, see how they're kind of swooping that direction? I'm gonna do the same thing to this part of it. I'm not gonna fully outline it though, okay? Because I don't want, I mean, the sun's gonna shine right there and catch that. So I'm gonna come down and outline or add some brush strokes where the artist drew like indentations in it, because that's where the curl would be deepest. Okay, so you guys notice this is all just kind of dissecting this out and seeing where you think those curls would lie. So I see this curl right here. And I'm gonna take this curl back. I'm just gonna draw a little line here. I'm gonna take it back to where it meets with that one. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. Okay. And then I'm gonna add my little brush strokes to make that look like it's a curling. Okay, that one. And that one. All right, so we're getting there, right? You're seeing this start to take shape. So I see where this line comes this way. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Just kind of mimic that line, bring it back up, and bring these down. Okay, so now we're creating these layers of these curls in her hair. Okay, so now we're to this part. And this part, you notice there's not a lot of artist drawn lines, so there's not a whole lot to go off of. So this is where you're gonna start to get creative. So I see that this curl here is where the artist has drawn. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of keep adding those curls and following that up. Then I'm gonna see here where the artist has drawn this line, and I'm gonna do the same thing, okay? And you guys remember, this is hair. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Kind of one of the cool things about coloring hair is that it is imperfect. So you have lots of liberties on how to do this, okay? So you notice I'm just adding these in. I'm gonna go ahead and take this one and kind of follow it down. Again, remember what I said about following the shape of her head? I'm kind of following that shape of her head. So I'm going to add my little brush strokes in this direction. And then I'm gonna come down here onto this curl, and anywhere where it starts to like indent, I'm going to add these little brush strokes in, because that's where that sort of ringlet gets stronger. Now there's two things you can do with this. You can leave this as one large curl, or you can separate it into two. I'm actually gonna separate it. So I'm just gonna take a line and just kind of sketch a line down, again, sort of following the shape of her head. I'm gonna make this curl in. And notice my brush strokes are kind of like these half moon shapes, because I want them to really show dimension that these are ringlets. All right, so one side of her hair is done. Again, like I said, you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit because this takes a little bit of doing. So if you don't get this right on the first try, keep going. I want you to follow it through, color her hair entirely. Then if you don't like it, you can scrap it and try again. But it does take many, many tries. I've just colored her a couple of times, so now I know where I want these curls to land. But if you just stick with it, it will get better and better each time, and you'll like it more and more each time. You will learn what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And that's the point of coloring and practicing, is learning what you don't want to do next time. All right, so we've created one curl there. Now, since this one's separated out, I'm gonna go ahead and start coloring this one. Which direction do I want it to go? Yeah, this way. So again, making those little half moon shapes. And again, I'm just gonna keep following this up all the way to where I had created that part. And then I'm gonna come back around. Remember that this is where the sun will hit. So I just wanna find those parts where the hair kind of indents to leave that in shadow. Okay. Now I see this one is outlined. So again, I'm gonna come this way. And again, I'm just gonna follow it up till it meets. And there's no right or wrong way for this, guys. There is absolutely no right or wrong. So if you decide that your curl goes in a different direction, there is no coloring police that are gonna come and tell you no, okay? Remember that, no coloring police. All right, so now I'm gonna take this one, since it's right here. I'm gonna color this one back up in here. I'm gonna go all the way up. Same thing on this side. These aren't really dreadlocks, but I certainly see where you could make them dreadlocks. It would definitely work. That could be really fun. I also see this girl as being a redhead with some crazy wild curly hair. I think that would be super fun too. I think I'm gonna color her that way as well. All right, so now we've gotten back down into the part where there's not really a lot of artist drawn lines to follow. So I'm gonna start with this one because I'm gonna let this artist drawn line sort of guide me. And I'm gonna take it this way. So I'm gonna make this one a separate curl, but it's just kind of in the back. There we go. So now this one, you can leave this, like I said, as one big curl, like I did with the last, or like I said with the last one, or you can cut it into multiples. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it into multiples. I'm gonna start on this side. Let's see. Which way do I want this to go? I want it to go like this. So I'm gonna start on this side. Like that. And then It's easier for me to curl this way. And again, I'm just kind of following the shape of her head to make these come out right. This one, since I already have this other curl sitting there, I'm gonna put this one in this direction. And then oh my gosh, I love this hair. It's so much fun. Yay. To me, this is kind of like a puzzle that you have to figure out. And I love that. All right. So now we have those curls all set. So now we're going to move on to the next color. And the next color is this E49. Now with E49, we're gonna kind of go over what we just did. So I'm just gonna start at the top so I don't lose my spot. And I'm just gonna make all of these little brush strokes in the same direction that I've already made them. So I'm gonna start on the top of all of these and add these little brush strokes in, and then I'll flip the paper upside down and do the same thing. And that way, you don't miss any of the curls. Notice I'm not adding like a ton of them because this color is still quite dark. And so I don't want to lose all the work that I'm doing. I'm just adding lots of color to her hair. The ones that are in back or behind, those are obviously going to be much darker. And just little brush strokes. Just like that. Now I'm going to work from this side. And add these little brush strokes to the bottom of the curl. It's so fun to watch this hair develop because there's so many times when you're doing it that you're like, oh my gosh, I've totally ruined it. But you really haven't. It takes some time and it takes some patience. So stick with it. You can do it. I'm sure you can. And notice that I'm not like taking a long time with this subsequent color. I'm just kind of going for it, adding little brush strokes here and there. I'm not worried about it being super even. The cool part about hair like this is that the light is going to catch it in a lot of different ways. So you sort of want that uneven, kind of unevenness about it, so that it's not perfectly uniform. Okay, and then I'm left with just this one in front. Okay, now we're gonna flip this over and go back and do the opposite side. I'm concentrating. Sometimes I make myself laugh with how, like, all of a sudden I'm super quiet and I don't even realize that I'm being super quiet. All right. So now we're moving over to the E77. The E77 is going to start to change the color of this hair because it's a very different type of brown. It's called maroon. And again, it's a very odd type of brown. I love adding it to this hair combo because it really, when you overlay it with the next two colors, it really brings out a fun undertone to the hair. I really like it. So now I've started to just do both sides. You can continue in either method that you want, but I'm just doing both sides of the curl at once because the curls are starting to close in. So I don't have a lot of room left in the highlight. So I'm just kind of going into both sides of it and adding this color. There we go. Okay. Don't forget this curl down here by your hand. I'm just moving fairly quickly up and down these curls. Because like I said, I don't want it super uniform. I want it to catch the light in different ways. Or at least to look like it's catching the light in different ways. Just like that. And this last curl. All right. So now is when you're going to start to really see the hair start to come to life. With these last two colors, it's really going to bring that vibrancy out. It's really going to add dimension to it. Up until this point, everything's been like a little bit dark in the hair. So these last two colors are really going to make it pop. And you'll be able to start to see your hard work pay off. And I'm just using that same kind of moon-shaped brush stroke. And I'm going through the hair, but notice I'm leaving lots of white space. I'm going through the highlight, but I'm still leaving lots of white space so that I can add that last color. It's actually easier for me to go this direction. And I'm making sure to stay inside of each one of these curls, because if you continually go outside of those curls, you're going to start to lose dimension in them. They're going to blend together. So I'm being careful to stay inside of each one of these. There we go. Now there's still lots of white space in there, so when I come in with this E57, you're really gonna see it come to life. I love adding this last color. It's like my favorite. So again, I'm still gonna use those same brush strokes those same half moon brush strokes, but this is kind of what adds that chocolatey color to the hair. I really, really like it. So much fun. Look, isn't that awesome? I love it. I totally love it. Super cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna flip this around and finish off this side. So the hair was super intimidating, or it looks super intimidating, but here you are. Check this out, totally rocking it. It's just a matter of breaking it down and taking it piece by piece so that you can tolerate it. If you look at the whole thing, it's really easy to get intimidated, but if you break it down piece by piece, it really makes it a lot easier to understand and to not get quite so afraid of it. To me, when I first looked at this stamp, I was like, oh my gosh, I love her, but how the heck am I going to color that hair? And in finding kind of the best way for me to color it, I was able to just sort of break it down piece by piece and make that happen. So there you go. Look at all those crazy curls. Love them. All right. Now, we are going to, I'm going to color her yoga pants. I don't know why, but for some reason I like to color the pants before the shirt. So it's just something, some mental block in my brain. But that is what I like to do. So that's what we're going to do today. All right. So B99, B95, oops, B99, B97, B95, B93, and B91. Apparently I need more coffee. These are our colors for her yoga pants. She's going to have these kind of denim blue looking yoga pants. I guess you could make them jeans, like they're capris or something along those lines too. But for me, she's just wearing yoga pants. So we're going to start with this B99. Again, I'm going to take both caps off. And I'm going to look at, again, where the sun is shining and where the sun is not shining. So, or where the light source is anyways. It doesn't necessarily have to be the sun. So I know where her leg is crossed or folded, that it's going to cast a shadow on her body behind her. So I'm going to go ahead and line this. And this is where I said, you know, don't worry about the gray lines. We're going to cover them later. This is where we're covering them, okay? The artist has drawn these little creases into her pants. I suggest to go ahead and color those as well. It gives them lots of movement. Now, speaking of creases, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add this little crease in and shadow a little bit behind it, just like that. I'm also going to color over this artist drawn line as well, just because that's the movement in the fabric. Okay, now I am going to go right here and color this, again, where the artist drawn line is. Christy's really good at studying fabric and knowing which direction it's going and how it creases and how it moves. I'm also going to take this and I'm going to kind of bring this around, because down here this would be in shadow. So I'm just going to add that shadow in there. Okay. Now we're going to kind of turn her this way and we're going to do the same thing over here. Just like that. Now you have the add on this one of where her elbow is touching her pants and creating a crease. So we're gonna add that in, just like that. Now I'm also gonna come down here and do the same thing where the artist drawn lines are. And then this is the inside of her pants. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that into shadow. Let's start to bring that shadow up her leg a little bit. And then like I did with this side, I'm gonna put shadow on this side as well. All right, so now I've added all the shadow to her pants. I'm actually gonna bring this one up just a little bit so it's equal to that one. Now I'm gonna pull the B97. And with my B97, just like I did with her skin tone, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna push that shadow back into itself. I'm gonna keep pushing the shadow back into itself, and I'm gonna overlap. Bring this up, just like that. Same thing here. I'm gonna push this shadow back down into the shadow, and then I'm gonna add those little lines there. I'm gonna kind of feather these lines out just a little bit. Just to create a smooth gradient. Gonna rotate. And just like before, we've already done, you know, kind of most of the hard part. So it's just a matter of following through. Pushing these shadows where they belong. Put them in their place. And then just kind of evening up the sides a little bit. All right. Now this B95 is the true color, again, because it's the middle color in our color blend. So we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna be slightly more liberal with it because we want our eye to trick our brain into telling it that this is the real color. So again, I'm just using these sweeping motions, these soft brush strokes. You never want to leave your marker nib on the paper for like a long time because that's how you'll get bleeding. So if I were to trace this around and leave my marker nib right there and just trace it around, I would get bleeding out here. So you want to use the brush strokes. This is a brush nib. There's a reason it's called that, is because you want to use the brush strokes. The shape of it is like a paintbrush, so you kind of want to use it like a paintbrush. Okay. Now, B93. Again, same thing. Keep pushing that shadow out of your highlight. Keep overlapping them with brush strokes. Rotate your paper as you need to. Same thing in this direction. This way. Just like that. Now B91 is considerably lighter than the B93, so there's a couple of things you can do. You can continually saturate and just go over these lines and kind of wash them out. You can still sort of see that line. Or we can do what's called tip-to-tip blending. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cap off the B93. I'm going to use the B91 to color on top of the B93. I'm picking up some of that pigment, and I'm going to lay it right where those two colors meet. This is a great way to expand your Copic collection if you are just starting out. You can tip-to-tip blend with pretty much any colors in the same color family, and it just makes that transition nice and smooth. Turn this upside down. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to coat this paper with that light blue. I'm going to take the B91 and color on top of the B93. And I'm going to use that to essentially make like a B92 so that I can ease that transition. Tip-to-tip blending is a great way to make it seem like you've used more markers than you've actually used, and to make that nice soft transition. Just make sure you're putting the right caps back on the right markers. I've done that many a time. All right, so now we have her yoga pants done. She's coming right along. So we're gonna move on, and we are going to color her shirt. I want some really vibrant brightness in here to kind of you know, mellow out all of these dark colors with her super dark hair and her super dark yoga pants. I want to add some brightness and vibrancy to this. So we're going to do her shirt in some crazy pinks. So RV66, RV17, RV09, RV04, and RV06. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. And this is our color blend. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start with my RV66. Now, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay attention to where I think the sun is shining and where I think it's not shining, or the light. So I'm going to start here with the cuff of her shirt. And I'm just going to kind of line this out a little bit where I think the shadows would be. I'm going to start dropping shadows in here where I think that they're going to be laying. So I think this is going to come around just a little bit. Just like that. Okay. Now I see where her shirt, where the sleeve here, the cuff of her sleeve is kind of into her sweatshirt. So I'm going to add a line there. And then just the very edge of this where it's coming around her wrist. Okay. Same thing here. This is kind of like creased. So I'm going to put this crease in here. Just like that. I'm going to add a little bit of a divot here. And then looks like this. And around. Okay. I'm also going to go ahead and bring this around, and I'm going to come down onto her abdomen just a little bit because I know her chest would leave a shadow. So I'm also going to kind of smooth that out. I'm not going to trace like this whole side because that's going to ruin my whole no lines part of it. So I'm going to leave some of that light. But I'm going to add another crease as I follow this around. These creases just create movement in the material. Okay, I'm actually also going to add a crease like right here because I think her shirt would be bunched up there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Christy's drawn lines for us to follow on this side, so I'm going to follow those lines. And once we've followed these lines around, we're going to go ahead and add shadow down this side of her because the way that her arm is down onto her leg, it's going to kind of drop all of this side in shadow. I'm going to come up here and put shadow where her shirt is creasing inside the cuff of her sleeve. And then I'm gonna kind of go around the outside of her sleeve because the way her arm is bent, it would leave a shadow on this part of her sleeve, not on the cuff. So I'm going behind the cuff. And then around her hair, be careful not to pick up the dark color of her hair. If you pick up this black and carry it out into the shirt, then obviously you'll have black ink out on your shirt and you don't want that. Okay, I'm gonna follow this cuff around her sleeve, and then where her elbow is like on her knee, I'm also gonna drop that into shadow. Okay, now there's a couple of lines up here, artist drawn lines that kind of elongate the shadow a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and trace over those. Okay, now I'm going to come up here and where her arm is, I think would cast a shadow there, and then obviously her shirt where it creases on itself here would cast a shadow. And then I'm going to put a tiny bit of shadow just up here because I think her hair would cast a shadow onto her shoulder. So we're just going to add a little bit of shadow there. This is just the deepest, darkest part of the shadows. We are going to be blending these out. Now, if you ever have a concern about your marker, this is RV17 and I'm also using RV09. I always kind of blot them off on paper and see which one's darker. You can see that the 09 is lighter than the 17 because Copic markers it's not actually 09, you're not counting. It's 09 and 17. So the numbers actually refer to the amount of pigment and the amount of saturation of that color in this marker. So they don't always, some of them are a little bit counterintuitive, I guess is what I'm getting at. So if you ever have a question about them, just kind of blot them a little bit on your paper, and then that way you can see which one is in fact darker. And again, I'm not outlining or tracing this entire thing. I'm kind of leaving some open spots there so that I can come in with the lighter colors and it will help it look more realistic, more 3D. I guess realistic's not really the word, but more dimensional. Okay, I'm just following around everywhere where I've already laid the shadow. And again, just, you know, kind of working on making sure that shadow stays pushed back to where it is. This color is considerably lighter than the shadow color that I laid. So I'm also kind of putting an overcoat on that shadow color so that it turns it just a little more pink and makes these look like they blend a little bit better. Okay. And every once in a while, I'll kind of confuse myself when I'm coloring upside down like this, so I just turn it back around, kind of get my bearings straight again of where I'm at and what I'm coloring. And then just go right back to work. So if you ever confuse yourself, it's totally fine. We all do it. Just turn your paper right side up again and take another look. Okay. RV09. Now you'll see once you start to lay this color in that it is considerably different than the other two colors. So you want to make sure that you do your overlay work here, and you tint those other colors with this color. But I just think that that really adds to the dimension of this whole project here. Okay. And you notice I do a lot of rotating of my paper, especially when I'm coloring material and stuff like this, just so it's easier for me to kind of get my brush strokes in. I've also taken this marker and I've started adding a lot more color with it. You notice that I'm kind of going back in and brushing these out so they're a little bit softer, and elongating these shadows a whole bunch. Firstly, because this is the middle color in my blend, so this is the true color of her shirt. But secondly, because I want to make all of these colors actually blend together. And so I'm adding this pink both as an overlay for the two colors I've laid, but also as a foundation for the next two colors that are highlight colors. So it's sort of dual purpose. Okay, so this next color is RV06. And with this RV06, so now this whole time I've been telling you, push those shadows into the shadows. With this one, I'm actually gonna pull this color out because see how different these two markers are? So if I work on pulling this color out and then I push it back in, then I'm going to kind of ease that transition. I can also do a little bit of tip to tip blending here to make that transition a little smoother as well. But this color is definitely very different than the previous two colors that we've used. Or three colors that we've used. I love doing tip to tip blending. I think it's really neat. I think it really helps you to learn how to soften your brush strokes and blend things out easily. So I think it's a great skill to learn. And it's just a good trick to add to your arsenal of tricks here. And this doesn't hurt your markers. Obviously, like I said, the markers layer, they don't blend, so you're just gonna pick up that pigment and you're gonna end up coloring it right off the nib of the other marker. So it's not too big of a deal. Okay. And now I'm gonna leave this one out just in case I need to do a little tip to tip with my next one. This is RV04. And I think I do. Pretty sure I chose all of these markers specifically so that I could show you tip to tip blending. Because like I said, I think it's really fun. And I think like neon workout shirts are kind of like the fad right now. They're all in fashion. So it adds this really cool kind of hot pink overlay to this dark purple undertone of this shirt. And I just think it's really a cool thing. Awesome. All right. And again, make sure you're putting the right tip on the right marker. Okay. So now that we have these all colored in, I'm actually going to take that RV04 and I'm going to add a little bit of it to her eyelids because she's going to be wearing pink eyeshadow. And I'm going to go back to my E21 just to kind of wash that out a tiny bit so it's not quite so vibrant on her eyelids. Okay. I am also going to take my E57 and I'm going to kind of trace the hair that Christy has drawn in for her eyebrows. So that it matches her hair on her head. That's always a good thing, right? I'm gonna take my multi-liner. You guys know how much I love my multi-liners. This one's the 0.03. And I'm gonna add a little pupil into her eye. And then I'm gonna have her eyes be actually a fairly light color. So I'm gonna take the E13 that I used for her skin and I'm just gonna draw, basically trace what Christy has in here for the iris. And then I'm gonna take my G000 and I'm gonna kind of wash that out a little bit. It'll lighten up that E13 considerably and give you a little bit of dimension to her eyes. I'm also going to take my C2 and put a little dot here at the corner of her eye and here at the corner of her eye. And then I'm going to take my colorless blender and I'm going to push that color into the shadow. This is going to make her eyeball look kind of rounded. Okay. Then, as a little cheat, I'm going to take my Jelly Roll pen, just the white one, and I'm going to add, oops, I'm gonna add a little bit of a highlight in her eye. Just adds a little highlight. And sometimes I dab it with my finger just so it's not quite so bright. And if you go a little bit too far, that's fine. You can just color over it. And do it again. There we go. That's better. Perfect. Okay, then I'm gonna go back to my multi-liner. So just adding this little bit of detail will definitely help your coloring kind of reach that next level. So just adding some little eyelashes. And then I'm going to grab RV34 and my R20. And I'm gonna use this as her lipstick. So RV34, I'm gonna do at the corners of her mouth. And then R20, I'm gonna use to kind of fill it in. And there you have it. She is all done. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this Sweet Sentiment class. I am so excited I got to color this for you. And I am so excited for those of you that also have the background class. We'll be doing that next video here. And thank you so much for being a part of Sweet Sentiment. So happy New Year, and I'll see you back here next month. Toodles!